The 26th season of MLS starts this week, and I have been waiting my whole life to finally make one of these prediction videos to show you guys my secret talent of predicting the future. There's 27 teams in this preview, so there's no time to waste. Buckle up, and here is my predictions for this season's upcoming league table. We're starting off this video with a team that is currently undergoing an identity crisis. After rebranding last year, the Fire announced that they will be rebranding again for the 2022 season. But besides the visuals of this team, the Chicago Fire were one of the only two teams that failed to win an away game in 2020. The difference between them and the other team, though, is that the Fire didn't end up winning the MLS Cup. Many times last year, we saw the Fire continuously shoot themselves in the foot. They didn't play bad all year, but for some reason they could never keep a lead, and they would surrender the worst goals that just came from stupid mistakes. In the last 15 minutes of matches, the Fire conceded 15 goals. They let two different 2-0 leads end in 2-2 draws, and also let another 2 stoppage time goals cost them vital points. If there's one thing Chicago can do to increase their chance of playoffs, it's staying focused through the whole 90+ minutes. But I don't see that happening, so no playoffs for the Fire. Chicago will miss out in 12th. David Beckham CF, also known as Inter Miami, had all the hype last year, but no product. This year though, with some more experience in the league, there's a possibility that they could right their wrongs from last year. The problem is though, after a disappointing 2020 season, Miami released 13 players, their head coach, and parts of their backroom staff, making this basically another beginning year for Inter Miami. Former England women's team coach Phil Neville takes charge of his first club team in his career. Also, from all the pictures on social media, it looks like Beckham has decided to take part in this 2021 season more than ever, attending every training session and being with the team on a consistent basis. Now, will all of this help Miami? Who knows? But what I do know is that Miami's star players need to show up this time around. Gonzalo Higuain had only 1 goal in 9 games last year, so he had his time to warm up to the league, and now it's time to perform. Some of the other European signings brought in this offseason do not look too exciting, especially looking at Ryan Shawcross, who basically said he would have retired unless Miami called him. So, can this Miami team qualify for the playoffs without the handicap that we saw last year? I don't think so. Miami finishes 10th. Nashville are gearing up for their second season in the league after a relatively successful inaugural year. It appears that opting for MLS veteran talent paid off as Nashville qualified for the playoffs and took out second-seeded Toronto FC in the conference quarterfinals. Nashville also became the second side to win a playoff game in their expansion year. Now they'll work on taking their success from their first season into their second. During the 2020 campaign, head coach Gary Smith was pretty adamant that their defensive style was not how they wanted the culture of their team to be. So we can imagine he will be doing everything he can to make Nashville the attacking threat that we saw late into their playoff run. With MLS Defender of the Year Walker Zimmerman in the back, I'm sure Nashville won't have many defensive troubles. But will designated players Ani Mukhtar and Randall Leal be able to improve their attacking contributions this year? That's where I think the fate of their season lies. Either way, Nashville will have another respectable year, and I think they can just squeeze into that playoff spot. Nashville will finish 7th. I know it gets boring hearing the same thing repeated over and over when I talk about Cincinnati, but it remains true that their first 2 years in the league have not been what their supporters would have wanted. 2 years, 2 wooden spoons. Luckily though, Cincy fans, I think that streak will be over for you this year. The team had a lot of issues, and one of them was their extremely poor scoring form. 12 goals in 23 games was definitely an issue. So, what did they do? Well, they broke their transfer record and signed a young and promising attacker for $13 million. Yes, it could be a risk, but I think it may be worth it hearing about how in demand Brenner was. For him to pick Cincinnati as his destination instead of looking overseas speaks wonders about the type of vision he sees in Cincinnati's future. Moving down the field, their midfield also lacked creativity. So, what did they do? Brought in former DC United star Luciano Acosta. Their defense lacked security. Well, what did they do? Brought in MLS experience with Ronald Matarrita. I think Cincinnati have made the right signings. Now it's time for them to perform. It's baby steps for Cincinnati, but at least it's steps in the right direction. FC Cincinnati will finish 11th. The Philadelphia Union have finally reached a point where they have proven that building your team from the academy can be a viable way to succeed in the MLS. Last year, they won the Supporters' Shield, and two of their best players were academy products, Brendan Aronson and Mark McKenzie. But after selling both to Europe for big profits, we will now see how well the Union is set up to fill in these gaps. They have promoted 5 new players from the Philadelphia 2, including Brendan Aronson's brother Paxton. Coach of the Year Jim Curtin did phenomenally well introducing former academy kids into the first team, and I expect him to continue that same philosophy going into the new season. I may not be on the Sons of Ben's good side with this prediction, but I don't think Philly will have as good of a year as they did last time. But that's okay. After losing such big components of the best Philly team we have seen in years, it's alright to take a small step back. But with that being said, I definitely see this team making the playoffs come the end of the year. Philadelphia Union will end up in 6th. Next up is the team with arguably the worst nickname in the league, New York City FC. I get that pigeons are all over New York, but really, that's what you're gonna use? Anyways, I think that head coach Ronny Deila may have given the preview on what NYCFC is looking to do this year. He basically said that his squad does not have enough quality of players to do anything in the league. And since making those comments at the beginning of March, they haven't really brought in anyone of significance. So now it's up to us fans to decide if Deila was just playing media games or if he is truly stating what he thinks. If even their head coach does not have high hopes for this season, that means I don't have high hopes either. They lost their captain to Austin, their striker is coming off a serious injury, and they only have one real designated player. To me, this all adds up to another disappointing year. NYCFC will miss the playoffs this year in 9th place. The New England Revolution has been one of the most consistently average teams in the MLS for the last few years. Since 2016, they have either finished 7th or 8th place in the Eastern Conference and made the playoffs 2 of those years. Towards the last stretch going into the playoffs in 2020, the Revs finally had their key players rejoining the squad, and no other more important than Carlos Gil. Another player who really found some form at the end of last season was Canadian outside back / winger Tajon Buchanan. Bruce Arena is a proven winner in MLS and is able to get his teams to do what he wants. A lot of people are predicting a big year for New England fans, but I'm not so sure. Like last season, I worry that if 1 or 2 of their players pick up significant injuries, they may find themselves in a slump. But I do think they will be a playoff team, and that's all you need for a chance to win it all. 5th place for the Revs. Since joining the league in 2012, Montreal has had 8 different head coaches. That's 8 coaches in 8 years. So when I say Montreal has been trying to build a reliable identity for their club for a while, I mean it. They probably thought that bringing in Thierry Henry last season would be at least the beginning of a project that could last a few years. But the pandemic had other plans. Henry left the club stating the decision came from the strain of the 2020 season on his family. And just like last season, Montreal will have to do it all over again as they begin their 2021 campaign playing in Florida due to the COVID-19 travel restrictions. After the news of Henry resigning, Montreal appointed assistant coach Wilfried Nancy to the managerial position. Even though Nancy has been with this team for a while now, I still expect there to be some growing pains as he looks to continue the project Henry was building. I don't expect much from Montreal this year, and I have them bottom of the East. After letting go of head coach Chris Armas right before the end of last season, they brought in former player and former academy coach of the Red Bull club in Salzburg. Jared Struber has experience inside the Red Bull philosophy and should be able to help create the high-intensity playstyle that helped New York gain their first Supporters' Shield in 2018. Struber has been working hard to bring in the pieces he needs to help make this goal possible. With Struber only managing this team for 1 game last season, I think it will take a minute for him to fully implement his style into the team this year. I could see this team making the playoffs, but as of now, I'm not too sure they have all the pieces they need. Red Bulls in 8th. DC United had a pretty bad decline last year, after falling 8 positions in the table and finishing in 13th place compared to their 5th place finish in 2019. And with such a deep fall comes the sacking of DC legend Ben Olsen, after 10 years leading the club. Coming in for Olsen is a manager famous for his all-out playstyle in Belgium. After dozens of possible head coaches being thrown around, DC fans were probably not expecting to end up at Hernan Losada, but I don't think they should be too disappointed. For a team that had their top scorer only net 4 goals last year, I think injecting an energetic, high-pressure tactic into this DC team could greatly improve their attacking threats. In Belgium, Losada was known for using a 3-5-2 formation. I think in order for that formation to work, DC should be looking to bring in some more signings into their team, but this offseason has been pretty dry for new arrivals. As I covered in my signings video earlier this year, their biggest acquisition was from the 2020 Super Draft. So I think it may take another year or so for Hernan Losada to really get the most of his players and bring in more pieces to help him. Because of this, I'm sensing more of a rebuilding year for DC. 13th place it is. Now it's time for the top 4. An era has ended in Toronto as Greg Vanney left his role as head coach after 6 years at the club and turning Toronto from one of the worst teams in the league to one of the best we have ever seen. Replacing him is former Red Bulls head coach Chris Armas. Toronto ended last year on a sour note, falling to 7th seeded Nashville SC in the first round of the playoffs. Luckily for them though, 2020 was a weird year, so it can be written off, right? They played in Connecticut for their home games and they had to be away from their families for months at a time. The unlucky part of this year though is that that situation hasn't gotten much better. They'll be starting the year playing in Orlando, but this time they have a bit of experience with this lifestyle. The key for Toronto will be to see how well they can play under their new head coach's system. At the Red Bulls, Armas was forced into playing Red Bull style soccer, which didn't end too well for him. But now we shall see exactly what type of coach he is. They still have 2020 MVP Pizzuelo in the roster, and we will see what comes from the currently injured wonderkid Akinola. I don't think Toronto will secure a spot as high as they did last year, but I'm gonna go 4th. The former Golden Boy expansion team Atlanta United will be fighting to prevent a repeat of last season, losing their head coach and also their star striker Joseph Martinez in their first league game. Well, it felt like Atlanta was destined to perform badly, and, well, they did. They missed the playoffs for the first time in their history, and they had the second least amount of goals in the league. So, just having Martinez back, in my opinion, makes this a guaranteed playoff team. I can also safely say that he will most likely be scoring double-digit goals this year. For their new manager, they brought in high-energy Argentine Gabriel Heinze. Heinze's high press tactics will work well with this team, and they will hopefully look more like their 2018 MLS Cup winning side. They also finally managed to bring in a new center back after a disastrous transfer saga, so we can expect them to be a little bit more solid in the back. But that also means that 36-year-old Brad Guzan still better have some gas in the tank. Atlanta will definitely have a better season this year, and I feel like they will finish in the top 3. So let's go for number 3. Orlando are coming off their best season since coming into the league. After years of disappointment, it was looking as if Orlando may never reach the levels that we expected. But Nani taking command, Chris Mueller and Daryl Dike bursting onto the scene, center back signing Antonio Carlos, and new head coach Oscar Pereira helped change Orlando's mentality and qualified them for the playoffs for the first time. They may lose DK after his loan with Barnsley ends, but I think this Orlando team has a ceiling even higher than their achievements last year. Their group was already building a good chemistry last year, and I think that with their success, they only grew closer. What Orlando has to watch out for though is themselves. Last year, on multiple occasions, a player gets frustrated, takes himself out of the game, and the team seems to lose their focus. I love to see teams get passionate about the game, but screaming in the ref's face for a whole 90 minutes isn't going to get you anywhere. I'm expecting Orlando to have a good year and 2 spots higher than last. 2nd place for the Lions. And finally, MLS Cup champions Columbus Crew actually went from a pretty good team that won the league last year to an even better team this offseason. The Crew kept basically the whole core from their title-winning team, along with adding multiple quality players to help them with depth. Last year, the whole team chipped in with goals throughout the season, but they really only had one striker in Zardes. But this year, they brought in 6th all-time leading scorer in MLS history in Bradley Wright Phillips on a free transfer. They also brought in Minnesota winger Kevin Molino on a free transfer as well. Columbus improved their attack, but they also have more defensive cover now with Vito Wormgor coming back from his season-long injury. After not winning a game on the road last season, I think that's where their questions lie. To fight for a supporter shield, which should definitely be a goal of the crew, they're going to need to perform home and away all year. I hate setting expectations, but the crew should 100% be competing for another trophy this year, and in my opinion, not topping the Eastern Conference would be disappointing for this team. With that being said, Columbus, they're going number 1. That's all the fun with the East handled. Now it's time to move over to the West. Even though there were many doubters last year for Sporting Kansas City, they did manage to finish top of the Western Conference. But due to the regionalized COVID-19 schedule, it meant that SKC did not have too many opportunities against some of the best Western teams in the league. I think we saw a truer depiction of this team in their 3-0 playoff loss to Minnesota. In 2019, SKC struggled offensively, and even though they improved, those same defensive question marks showed up again in 2020. After the failure of Winston Reed, Kansas City went back out to Europe to bring in Ligue 1 and Eredivisie center back Nicolas Ismat-Miram. On the other side of the field, Alan Pulido showed up well for the team in the small amount of games he managed to play. In his 12 games, Pulido had 6 goals and 5 assists. If Pulido can become more reliable with his injuries and playtime, he should be able to outperform his first season's numbers. SKC won't be repeating their first place finish last season, but they will be in the playoffs, in 5th. For the last few years, San Jose coach Almeida has been working on bringing in the right pieces that will help him efficiently execute his totally unique man-marking playstyle. Judging by his team conceding 51 goals in 23 regular season games, I think he still needed more guys. In 2020, the Quakes managed to just squeeze into the extended playoff spots at the end of the season. This year, they'll be helping to improve on that, but I can't quite see it happening. So far this offseason, they have brought in multiple new players, and almost every single one has been a former player in the Almeida team. Also, luckily for all of us MLS fans, the highest scoring player in league history decided to stay for another year. Can now 38-year-old Chris Wondolowski still make an impact in this team? I'm hoping so, but I don't see them making the playoffs. San Jose, you're 9th. The Vancouver Whitecaps are the only team last year to not record a single draw, so before even starting, at least we know a little bit about this team. They'll either be really good or really bad, no in between. As like other Canadian teams this year, Vancouver will be starting their season in a temporary home at Rio Tinto Stadium in Utah. Out of the 3 years head coach Marc Dos Santos has been with his team, they have not managed to qualify for the postseason. So it's quite hard to see that once again, under undesirable circumstances, they will be able to pull it off. They will be looking at their club record signing Lucas Cavallini to improve from his first year in the league and put in a few more than 6 goals up top. They also brought in pacey winger Caicedo that could help make their attack be a little more dynamic. Will this team make the playoffs? No. But will they finish bottom of the league? In my opinion, no again. I expect the Whitecaps to finish 11th. Colorado has been very mediocre for the last few seasons, and last year they qualified for the playoffs for the first time since their great 2016 season. I'm not expecting any crazy numbers from the Rapids this year, and as it is head coach Robin Fraser's second full year in charge, I'm seeing this as another year of small improvements for this team. What I am excited to see this year though is the continued development of star youngster Sam Vines. Colorado is one of the teams leading the Play Your Kids charge in MLS, so another year of Rapids soccer means another year of experience for a number of the 10 homegrown players on their roster. The team's biggest criticism and point of improvement I would like to see this season is the ability to bring in energy to the opponents they play. I want to see Colorado take charge of games and run teams ragged. If we can see this, then I think we can see another year in the playoffs. Colorado finished 6th. New boys on the block, Austin FC, are planning to make their inaugural year legendary. I always get excited to see new teams join this league, and this is no exception. They started off strong with their signings, bringing in NYCFC captain Alex Ring for up to $1.25 million in general allocation money. I mean, talk about starting off with a bang. Austin also brought in Paraguayan left winger Dominguez as their first ever DP. They managed to set up a strong foundation with MLS veterans and have added intriguing South American talent in the attack. Head coach Josh Wolf was an assistant under Greg Berhalter during his time in Columbus, so it's expected that Austin will be setting up in a similar possession style like Columbus had during the Berhalter era. Austin has a real chance to set this league alight with their fan base and take over as the best supported club in Texas. It's hard for expansion teams to start off firing right away, but I could see Austin doing it. For now though, I have them in 10th. Now it's time to preview the biggest club in MLS, FC Bayern 2. also known as FC Dallas. Although producing some amazing talents that have been shipped overseas like Reggie Cannon and more importantly Brian Reynolds, Dallas hasn't really made anything happen in the league since dominating the 2016 campaign. Their designated players over the years have also not been the best. Currently, Dallas have two DPs in forwards Franco Jara and midfielder Brian Acosta, but both do not bring anything to this team that can't be replaced. One name to look out for is Colombian winger Jader O'Brien, who is coming into Dallas after scoring 27 goals in 68 appearances in the Colombian League. Kinda like Colorado, this is a team where I think their excitement comes from their academy products. Hopefully, after missing all of last season, Paxton Pomykal can come close to his potential, and maybe we will even see another Brian Reynolds come through this team and make an impression overseas. I'm predicting this Dallas team to be the last team to clinch their playoff spot, in 7th. Now, I think that Real Salt Lake is just going through it at the moment. After their whole owner scandal last year, they still find themselves in an ownership limbo without knowing what the future holds. This team was only 1 point away from being bottom feeders in the West last year, and I'm not seeing them improving drastically. With only 25 goals scored in 2020, they have not brought in anyone to help improve that number. In the summer, they will have former U.S. men's national team striker Bobby Wood join this team from the Bundesliga 2. But Wood has not seen the net as much of late. I guess there's always a chance Wood could come in and be the kickstart this team needs, but I think he'll be too late. RSL, I'm sorry I'm doing this to you, but I think you'll be holding up the West this season. Houston Dynamo finished last season bottom of the West and only 4 wins to their name. Coming into the offseason, they decided they will look for new players who already have experience playing in the league. MLS veteran Tim Parker was on the top of that list for them. Then, after Austin FC stumbled around with Joe Corona, Houston quickly swooped in and stole him after they selected him in their expansion draft. Now, I know a bit about MLS, but I still get confused trying to wrap my head around how that whole situation played out. In the attack, Houston failed to bring in any real support to help the aging Darwin Quintero. I wish I could give some hope to Houston fans, but just like your new badge, I don't like how your season is going to look. I predict a 12th place finish for you. The Galaxy are a whole lot different from the team that secured their 5th MLS Cup years ago. After a dreadful 2020 campaign where they nearly finished almost at the bottom of the 26 teams participating, head coach Guillermo Barros-Schelotto was sacked. But with every door closed, a new one opens, and this time it's in the shape of former Galaxy legend Greg Vanney. Greg is coming into this Galaxy team after cultivating a dominating team in Toronto. So now he gets to restart and do it all over again with LA. Basically what I'm saying is that Vanney is just starting his project. A project that could take a few years to get right. Currently, the Galaxy do have a few players that could definitely help increase the speed of this project if they can find their feet. After coming in for $9 million last year, it's time for Chicharito to finally announce himself in the league. I'm expecting much more goals than his 2 last year. If Vanney gets his team supplying the Mexican forward, we may be talking about a playoff team here, but I don't think it's going to be that easy. I'm going to give Greg some time to fix this roster and sort out his players' mentalities that come with it. So this year, I'm writing it all for them. LA Galaxy will miss out on the postseason once again and finish in 8th. Minnesota were 15 minutes away from booking their place in their first ever MLS Cup final, before falling apart and letting Seattle score 3 unanswered goals before regulation time ended. So, Minnesota is coming into 2021 with a point to prove. They showed that they could keep up with the big boys last year as they finished 4th in the West and made their remarkable journey to the conference finals. Late in the season, we saw how big of a factor designated player Emmanuel Reynoso could be for this team in tight games. In Minnesota's 3 playoff matches, Reynoso had a goal and 7 assists. That's right, 7 assists in just over 250 minutes. So a full season of that type of form could definitely see a repeat on their success in 2020. But I'm not sure Reynoso has the same level of weapons that he had during that late playoff run. The team did not keep dynamic winger Kevin Molino, and it looks like they may be playing without a true number 9 this year unless Han Aguadella can prove he's the man for the job, or they bring in a big striker that is rumored. The absences of some true game changers in the attack make me question how far Minnesota can truly go. And with these questions, I have them finishing in 4th. I think everyone will agree that the Seattle Sounders have lost too many key pieces to be considered at the same level as they were in 2020. The biggest loss has to be Jordan Morris, who set out on his European adventure and it was cut short after another ACL injury. Therefore, he's out for the season. They also lost some of their veteran experience in the departure of Gustav Svensson and Calvin Leerdam, who joined Inter Miami. But even though Seattle lost a few of their starters, they still have many best 11 players with that winning mentality that got the Sounders to 4 of the last 5 Cup finals. They still have a striker that will terrify oppositions in Raul Ruidiaz. They brought in João Paulo on a permanent deal, and they also have Nicolas Ladero, who pulled the strings for the team last year with 10 assists in 20 games. As Seattle usually does, they get better as the season goes on, and they could be bringing in more faces throughout the year. As of now though, I don't see them being number 1 in the West, but they won't be far off from me. Seattle is 3rd. The Portland Timbers, holder of the one and only MLS's Back Tournament trophy, are looking to be strong contenders this year. They had the 2nd most goals in the regular season, and only 3 of their 46 goals came from penalties. It is easy to look past Portland, but since 2015 they have been involved in 2 of the 6 MLS Cup finals. This year they will have one of the deepest squads in the league, and if they don't suffer too many injuries like last season, they could honestly represent the West in another Cup final. I fear how much longer their core can last though as they grow older each year, with attacking midfielder Diego Valeri now 34 years old, Sebastian Blanco 33, and midfield anchor Diego Chara 35. It will be interesting to see how many games these guys will be playing, especially when the league gets congested in the middle and end of the season. But if Giovanni Savarese can manage their game time effectively, this team has what it takes to challenge to sit top of the West. I'm putting Portland number 2. And lastly, it's LAFC. I think last year was a big wake-up call to this team. Since joining the league, they haven't really had a significant rough patch other than those LA derbies they kept losing. But after the pandemic and Vela missing most of the season, LAFC found themselves struggling with multiple poor runs of form. They managed to have the most goals during the regular season with 47, but the issue for LA came from their back line. In their 23 games last year, they conceded 39 goals, which was the 3rd most goals conceded by a playoff team. Trading Walker Zimmerman to Nashville definitely affected this team, but they also struggled in the midfield, which led to way too many chances for the opposition. They have brought in more cover in the back in Kim Moon Hwan and Marco Farfan from the Portland Timbers. I expect LAFC to return to the powerhouse team that they were in 2018 and 2019, especially if Vela comes back in full form for the new season. I'm predicting a big jump for LAFC, and they will finish in 1st. Now, if I had to throw out a prediction for MLS Cup champion this year, I think I'd go with LAFC. After getting close their first 2 years, I think this will be the season they finally get over that playoff hump. With so many teams in the league, other people are bound to have different predictions than I do. So let me know what team you think I misplaced and who do you think will be winning it all this year. I'm looking forward to seeing your thoughts, and MLS is finally almost back. Until next time, thanks for watching.